He grabbed my wrist across the kitchen island and said, very quietly, "You are going to regret opening your mouth." He wasn't looking at me when he said it. He was looking at the counter. That was the part that scared me most. He didn't even think I was worth making eye contact with. That was a Tuesday in March. Outside it was still February cold, the kind of gray that settles into southern Ontario like it owns the place. Inside I was standing in my own kitchen, in my own house, that I had helped pay for, and my husband was threatening me over a grocery receipt. I should back up. My name is Tara. I'm 31 years old. I did work before everything fell apart and got put back together differently. As a pharmacy technician at a Shoppers Drug Mart in Hamilton. I have a younger brother named Cole. He's 27, works up in Sudbury in mine safety, and before this past year we talked maybe 4 times a year. Birthdays, Christmas, the odd Sunday when one of us was bored enough to call. I married my husband. I'll call him my husband because I'm not ready to say his name and I don't think you need it. When I was 26. We met through mutual friends at a cottage weekend near Parry Sound. He was charming in that specific way that looks like confidence from the outside and only reveals itself as control once you're already in too deep. He made me feel chosen, and I was young enough and lonely enough that being chosen felt like the same thing as being loved. By our 3rd year of marriage, I understood the difference. He had rules. Not written down, not stated outright. That's not how it works. It was more like a constant recalibration of what was acceptable. The grocery receipt incident, I had bought 2 bags of chips and a bottle of wine without telling him first. Not asking permission, telling him. He had decided that purchases over $40 required discussion. I had missed that rule update. By that point, there had been so many rule updates that I had stopped being able to track them all. The wrist grab was not the first time he had touched me like that. It was also not the worst. But it was the first time it happened in broad daylight in a lit room where I could see his face clearly and understand that he had absolutely no idea he was doing anything wrong. That night I called my mother. She told me I needed to try harder. She said marriage was work, that I was probably stressed, that he was a good provider. My mother has known my husband for 5 years, and in those 5 years she has learned that he brings a very nice bottle of wine to every family dinner, and she has decided that this is character. I hung up the phone and sat on the bathroom floor for a while. Then I called Cole. I hadn't planned to. I was actually calling to check if our mother had said the same things to him. They talk more than she and I do, and instead I just started crying before I could say hello. Real crying, the ugly kind that you can't perform, the kind that means you've been holding something in for longer than you realized. Cole didn't say much. He listened for almost 20 minutes, and then he said, very simply, "Tara, I'm coming down. You don't have to do that," I said. "I know I don't have to," he said. "I'm doing it anyway." He drove 8 hours from Sudbury in a truck that probably shouldn't have made that trip. He showed up at 7 in the morning on a Thursday with a Tim Hortons bag and the particular look on his face that I remembered from when we were kids, the one he got when something genuinely needed handling. Cole is not a large man. He's maybe 5'10", lean, has our dad's blunt nose and our grandfather's stubbornness. He spent 4 years working underground before moving into safety management, and somewhere in there he developed this quality that I can only describe as the complete absence of fear. Not bravado, not aggression. Just, he genuinely does not panic, he assesses. In mine safety, that's the difference between a rescue and a catastrophe. We sat in my car in a parking lot near the Limeridge Mall because I didn't want to be in the house and I didn't want to be somewhere my husband might walk in. I told Cole everything. Not the edited version I'd been giving everyone else. All of it. The rules. The wrist. The way he spoke to me in front of his friends. The dismissals so subtle that I always questioned whether they'd happened. The time he went through my phone and then acted like I was unreasonable for minding. The money. My name was on the mortgage. But he managed our joint account, and I had started to understand slowly that I was not permitted to know how much was in it. Cole listened. He asked 3 questions. None of them were "Are you sure?" or "Have you talked to him about how you feel?" They were, "How long has this been going on? What do you want to happen? And what does he think you're likely to do next?" That last question caught me off guard. "He thinks I'll stay," I said. "He thinks I always stay. And I think he thinks I need him. He's been making me feel like I need him." Cole nodded slowly and finished his coffee. Then he said, "Okay, I have an idea, but you have to tell me you want out, not just that you're unhappy." Because what I'm thinking is going to close a door behind you, and I need to know you want the door closed. I want to tell you I hesitated dramatically and stared into the middle distance and arrived at the decision like a character in a film. But the truth is, I said yes before he finished his sentence. I'd known for 8 months, maybe longer. I was just waiting for someone to hand me something solid enough to hold on to. Here is what Cole did, and here is why it worked. My husband had an idea of what I was like. He'd spent 5 years building that idea very carefully. The version of me that needed guidance, that got overwhelmed easily, that would avoid conflict at almost any cost. He believed in that version of me the way some people believe in a story they've told enough times that they've forgotten they invented it. Cole is a man who looks on the surface completely unremarkable. He wears Carhartt and drives a muddy truck, and his hands are roughed up from years of physical work. My husband had met him maybe 6 times and had categorized him, I think, as the harmless, slightly dim younger brother. Not a threat. That assumption was going to cost him. The first thing we did, together, with the help of a lawyer I found through the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic, was get a clear picture of our finances. This was harder than it sounds. He had structured our accounts in a way that gave me access to the surface but not the depth. But I had my name on enough to matter, and with a family lawyer, a woman in her 50s named something I'll keep private, who had the calm efficiency of someone who has heard every version of this story and is still genuinely furious on behalf of all of them, we started mapping it out. My husband had a business. A consulting firm, small, about 12 employees, very profitable. During our marriage, I had, at his request, co-signed several financing documents. He had told me this was standard procedure, that it protected us both, that I shouldn't worry about the details. I had signed. I should not have signed without reading them, but I had been trained by then to not ask questions that made him tired. It turned out that I was listed as a co-applicant on a line of credit against the house. For $240,000. I want you to understand that I did not know this existed. When my lawyer explained it to me, I sat very still for a moment, and then I said, "Can he do that?" And she said he did do that. The question now is what we do about it. While I was doing this part, the documentation, the financial untangling, the quiet and deeply unsexy work of building a case, Cole was doing something else. He had asked to stay with us. Just for a few days, he told my husband when he called ahead to arrange it. Got some stuff to sort out in Hamilton, need a base. My husband said yes, because saying no would have looked unreasonable, and he never did anything that looked unreasonable. Cole moved into the guest room on a Friday. By Sunday, my husband had stopped pretending to be pleasant. Not in a dramatic way. He just let the performance slip slightly when he thought I wasn't watching. Cole watches everything. That's mind safety again. You learn to read a room the way other people read text. He corrected you 4 times at dinner, Cole told me quietly, when we were doing dishes and my husband had gone to his office. Each time you were right, he knows you were right, he corrected you. Anyway. I know, I said. He also checked your phone while you were in the bathroom. He picked it up off the counter. Just picked it up and looked at it. Did you say anything? Cole smiled a little. I just watched him do it. He put it down when he saw me looking. Didn't say anything, neither did I. He paused. He doesn't like being watched. That, as it turned out, was the key to everything. My husband had an important meeting the following Thursday. A potential client, a manufacturing company in Mississauga, the kind of contract that would have significantly expanded his business. He had been preparing for it for weeks. He had talked about it at length. He had, without quite saying so, been very clear that this meeting was more important than anything I might have going on that week. I was going to be there, not as myself, as something else. Cole had a contact, a former colleague from his Sudbury years, who now worked in HR consulting in the GTA. Her name isn't important. What mattered was that she had, for reasons I won't get into, a professional relationship with someone at the manufacturing company my husband was trying to land. And through a chain of introductions that Cole had been quietly assembling for the better part of 2 weeks, I was going to walk into that meeting as a junior associate of that contact's firm. Let me be clear about something. This was not illegal. I was not misrepresenting my professional credentials in a formal sense. The role I was playing was specifically that of an administrative observer, someone there to take notes and handle scheduling follow-up. The contact vouched for me. My name, a variation on a middle name I'd never used, was on a legitimate business card. Cole had thought through every inch of this, and Cole thinks the way he works. He finds every crack in a structure before he lets anyone stand on it. I did my hair differently. I wore glasses I don't normally need but have in the prescription I don't use. I wore a suit my husband had never seen. We have been married for 5 years and my husband, I have come to understand, does not actually look at me very often. He looks at his version of me, the story of me, and as long as something approximately me-shaped is in the right place, he sees what he expects. He did not recognize me. I watched him walk into the boardroom. He had on the blue shirt he always wore to important meetings, the one he thought made him look trustworthy. He shook hands. He smiled the way he smiled at people he wanted to impress. All attention, no warmth. He set up his presentation. He was good at this part, I'll give him that. Then he started talking. He talked about his firm. He talked about his track record. And then, about 20 minutes in, the conversation shifted toward financial stability. The client wanted to understand his operational backing, his cash position, whether he could scale to meet a larger contract. And my husband, trying to sound solid, mentioned the line of credit. He mentioned the house. He mentioned, and this is the part that made something go very cold in my chest, that his financing was secured jointly, through the family, and that it represented a stable long-term asset. He was using me. Not my presence, not my work, my signature. My legal obligation to a debt I didn't know I'd agreed to, packaged up and presented as his own stability. I did not react visibly. I had been told by Cole very specifically, your face cannot do the thing it wants to do. I breathed. I made a note on my legal pad. After the meeting I made my exit before he had a chance to linger near me. I doubt he would have looked twice. But I was done taking chances. What happened next took about 3 weeks and involved more paperwork than I want to describe in detail, because I think you deserve to hear the outcome, not the filing system. My lawyer contacted his lawyer. I had filed for separation. The line of credit, the one I hadn't known about, the one I hadn't meaningfully consented to, was under dispute, and my lawyer had documented the process by which I had come to sign it, including the fact that I had not been given independent legal advice before doing so, which in Ontario, for a document of that size tied to matrimonial property, is actually required. His lawyer called mine multiple times. My husband called me twice from a number I didn't recognize, which tells you something about how certain he was that I'd blocked him, and therefore something about how certain he was of what he'd done. I didn't answer. My lawyer answered. He showed up at the house once, in the evening 3 weeks after I'd moved out. I was staying in Cole's old bedroom at our mother's, which was uncomfortable for reasons both physical and emotional, but it was mine, and I was safe. He didn't know I wasn't there. Cole was. Cole opened the door. I heard about this conversation afterward. From Cole, who is not a dramatic storyteller, which made it somehow more effective. My husband had asked where I was. Cole had said he wasn't sure. My husband had said some things that Cole described, neutrally, as what you'd expect. And then my husband had made the mistake of suggesting, apparently with some confidence, that Cole didn't understand the situation, that I had a history of being difficult, that this was going to resolve itself once I settled down. Cole let him finish. Then Cole said, I grew up with her. I know exactly who she is, and I've spent the last 3 weeks learning exactly who you are. He paused. The financial documents are with her lawyer. The recording of you describing the line of credit as a joint family asset to a third party is with her lawyer. The text messages, the ones where you explain to your friend how to structure shared accounts so your wife can't see the full balance, are with her lawyer. Another pause. You can leave now. My husband left. I want to pause here and tell you about my mother. She had spent 25 years managing our household with the particular exhausted competence of a woman who had decided that keeping things smooth was more important than keeping things honest. She had told me when I called her from the bathroom floor to try harder. She had told me, when I told her I was leaving, that I was making a mistake. She had said these things not because she was cruel, but because she had never been given a model for what to when a woman is not okay, except to encourage her to become okay faster. When Cole told her about the line of credit, she went quiet for a long time. Then she said, I didn't know. I know you didn't, he said. I told her to stay, she said. I know. She came to see me at her own house. I was in Cole's old room. She knocked on the door like a guest, and she sat on the edge of the bed and she said, I should have listened differently. That was all she said. It wasn't an apology exactly. But it was the most honest thing my mother had said to me in years, and I think it cost her something real to say it. I told her it was okay. I'm still deciding if that's true. I think it might take a while to become true. But we're talking now, and we're talking more carefully, which is maybe where you start. Here is what the settlement ended up looking like. The matrimonial home was sold. My name was on the mortgage. My name was on the deed. Half of the equity came to me, which, after 5 years of paying into a property in Hamilton, which even in a slower market had appreciated significantly, was not a small amount. The contested line of credit was revisited. Because I had not received independent legal advice before signing, because the document had been presented to me without adequate disclosure, my exposure to that debt was restructured significantly. It was not eliminated, that would have been a different kind of fight. But what I walked away responsible for was manageable. His business contract, the Mississauga one, fell through. I don't know the specific reason. I can tell you that business relationships depend significantly on trust, and that people who are navigating a disputed matrimonial claim that implicates the financial stability they represented to a potential client sometimes find that the timing is not ideal. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in the East End of Hamilton in late May. Cole helped me move. We rented a truck and drove back and forth in the rain, and he made me laugh for the first time in what felt like years. Genuinely laugh. The way you do when you're tired and things are actually funny instead of when you're trying to seem like everything is fine. On the last trip, carrying the last box up the stairs, he stopped at the landing and said, "You good?" And I thought about it, actually thought about it, instead of just answering. "Yeah," I said. "I think so." He nodded, set the box down, looked around the stairwell like he was checking it for structural integrity, which honestly might be what he was actually doing. "Good," he said. And that was it. There are things I'm still sorting out. I'm back at the pharmacy, which was harder than I expected. Not the work, but the walking back in and having people look at me and try not to ask questions while obviously wanting to ask questions. I have a therapist I see every 2 weeks, a woman who has an office near Lock Street and an admirable gift for sitting with silence. I have learned that sitting with silence is harder than it sounds, and also that I had been very bad at it for a very long time, and that filling silence with compliance is not the same as being okay. My mother and I are having dinner every second Sunday. We are learning slowly to say what we actually mean. It doesn't always work, but we keep trying. Cole is back in Sudbury. He texted me last week a photo of his dog in the snow, a huge shepherd mix named something ridiculous, with the caption, "She says hi." I sent back a voice memo of me laughing. That felt like enough. I think about what it would have looked like if I had kept staying, if I had kept smoothing things over and calling it working on it, if my husband had walked into that meeting in Mississauga and used my name and my signature and my silence as an I had never known. I think about the bathroom floor, the grocery receipt, the wrist. I think about Cole driving 8 hours in a truck that probably shouldn't have made it and showing up with a Tim Hortons bag and not asking me if I was sure. There is a version of this story that ends on the bathroom floor. I used to think that was the version I was living. I think a lot of women think they're living that version because it's the one that gets the most practice, the one that everyone around you has learned to accommodate. But there's another version. It requires someone who shows up before you think to ask, and a door you're willing to let close behind you. I closed the door, and on the other side of it, in a one-bedroom apartment in the East End of Hamilton, I am learning what quiet sounds like when it isn't something to be afraid of.